Okay, so welcome to another exciting episode of the Microsoft 365 Business Boost. I'm Nick DeCourcy, and I'm here with Thurman Trotman.
Hello there.
And it's been an exciting couple of weeks because we had lots of announcements. We had Microsoft Build. So let's just kick off by talking about what got us excited at Microsoft Build. And what did you see that really caught your eye, Thurman?
Well, you already know it was heavily about Copilot. AI is taking the world by storm. I'm sorry, it has been taking the world by storm.
The Copilot company, isn't it? Microsoft now?
Yeah, exactly. So this is, I want to read you something from an article that came from Build.
Okay.
And this is the thing that caught my eye, right?
Okay.
So here's the first paragraph real quick. So at Microsoft Build 2024, we're excited to announce a host of new powerful capabilities in Microsoft Copilot Studio, the single conversational AI tool you can use to create your own custom copilots or extend Microsoft Copilot experiences with your own enterprise data and scenarios. Sounds excellent. So what caught my eye about this was two specific things. They gave examples of what you could do with an IT help desk and employee onboarding. The reason why those two things caught my eye is because I'm a SharePoint guy. I run into a lot of people who are trying to do things on SharePoint, obviously. Constantly, it's, can I build a help desk ticketing system with SharePoint? I bring that up because I'm always like, well, wait a minute. You know what I'm saying? This should be one of the earliest things you do in your business is have an IT help desk process. But, you know, just for whatever reason, it's just not. So they're always like, hey, can I do that on SharePoint? And I'm like, yeah, you can. You know what I mean? It's not a big deal. It's a bit of a, well, actually, it is kind of a big deal. But depending on how complex you want to make it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Depending on what you want to do. So now here's what they said, right? Listen to this. With these new capabilities, here are some examples of the kinds of copilots our customers can build. Here's the IT help desk one. IT support is complex, involving tickets, order numbers, approvals, and stock levels. Opening and closing a ticket can be a long-running task that spans days. A copilot can now handle this process, interfacing with IT service management applications, resolving IT tickets with context and memory, creating purchase orders for device refresh, and reaching out and getting managers' approvals, all independently. They closed the deal right there with all independently. So this right here sounds amazing.
Yep.
But me personally, I don't think that this is a reality just yet. And maybe I'm being pessimistic, which I'm not. I'm not a pessimistic person. But if you are not even in a situation where you have an IT help desk process down, what does this mean to you? Like, what does having a copilot mean to you? What is the copilot gonna look at in order to know how long, you know, normally your tickets take? What is your copilot gonna look at when it's reaching out to managers or creating purchase orders for refresh? Do you have that process down? I'm trying to figure out how valuable is something like this if you are still in a situation where your help desk process is broken. Now, Nick, before you respond, I got number two. Here's the other example. Employee onboarding. Once again, I'm in people's intranets all the time, and employee onboarding, from what I've seen, for whatever reason, is not down yet. People don't have this onboarding process knocked out of the park. I don't understand why, but, you know, whatever. That's a whole nother story.
Even in fairly big organizations, this continues to be the case. We're not necessarily talking about smaller organizations.
Right.
There are big organizations where people turn up and they don't have everything set up for them. Their first day is kind of a bit of everyone in the background running around and trying to fix things because it hasn't been worked out.
Exactly. They're waiting on computers. They're waiting on peripherals for the computers. They don't have their benefits down yet. I don't know. Payroll is always knocking, you know, payroll got to get done. So they always, for some reason, can figure out payroll, but everything else is always like a hodgepodge. Yeah. So for employee onboarding, here's what Microsoft says. Onboarding new employees is often expensive and slow. Now, imagine you're a new hire. A copilot greets you, reasons over HR data, and answers your questions. it introduces you to your buddy. I don't know who the buddy is, but it introduces you to your buddy, provides training and deadlines, assists with forms, and sets up your first week of meetings. Throughout all of this, the Copilot is in touch, guiding you through the weeks-long onboarding and account setup processes. Again, this sounds amazing. You know what I'm saying? But how do you deploy this if your current employee onboarding process is jacked? What does this mean to you? I think that Microsoft is missing one thing, right? Just one thing when it comes to all these cool things that they're doing with Copilot. They're missing that gap where it's like organization, I'm getting camera here, organization is here, Copilot is here. You need to put something in here to make sure that your organization is ready to really reap the benefits of Copilot. That's how these things work. Because what is Copilot looking at if your current process is not down? You know what I'm saying? Like if you, like I said, you got payroll is good to go, but for some reason, the person is always sitting there waiting on their computer. So it's like, hey, twiddle your fingers and do something.
And how are they talking to Copilot if they're
that too? How are you talking Copilot? You know what I'm saying? So I like this because it sounds excellent, but I just don't know how valuable it is to an organization unless, they got their stuff together, I'll say.
Yeah.
Nick, what say you?
Well, I think right the way through since last year when Copilot for Microsoft 365 was announced, Microsoft has been at least half in the camp of selling an aspiration and maybe only half in the camp of selling a reality. And there are still things that were announced fairly early last year that are not reality in the product that we see today. And I can see the value of this kind of aspirational selling, because I think it's difficult for people to really understand what is the journey that we're on. Like we're kind of mapping out a journey of what could this look like. And unless there are models of what could this look like, then no one's going to get there. Someone has to model it. But we have a history, if you look at like the rollout of Teams, for example. Like most people, despite all the tooling that exists within Teams, ended up with kind of a hodgepodge mess of Teams. I don't know whether I'm creating a team. I don't know whether I'm creating a chat. All the technical pieces are there, but it comes down to how people are using it. So I think your first question, kind of a question here, was, well, is this reality? And I would say, objectively, this is not reality right now. Things were announced at Build that are announcements. And, I actually think they did a better job of this, Thurman. This is one of the things that I've kind of screamed about with Microsoft with these announcements of, well, is it announced? Is it general release? Is it in preview? Like, what is exactly going on with this? And they were actually very clear in some of these of saying, we are announcing. This is in preview. This is general release. I think they did a much better job of that. And this is not something that you could go and do as is outlined right now. But at the same time, this is something that in some ways we've been able to do for a while. If you look at the combination of things like Power Automate Flows and Power Virtual Agents, have we conceptually been able to have a process that we can iterate through using Power Platform? Even using AI Builder. Yeah, we've been able to do that for a long while. So I think what Microsoft is really selling here is, how do all of these components come together under the framework of a Copilot? And how do we deploy a Copilot to these different situations? Because there are lots of people that already use some level of automation in the background when they're creating something in a Microsoft list or when something's triggering at a different system. That isn't uncommon today.
Yeah, but here's the thing though. When I sit down in front of my Office 365 environment, there's a lot of things that I could do. I'm pretty dangerous because I know this stuff. This whole onboarding employees and whatever, that process makes it sound easy. You know what I'm saying? Copilot, they said, listen to the first line. It's an AI tool you can use to create your very own custom Copilots. No, I'm sorry. The single conversational AI tool you can use to create. So before, where I know what I'm doing, I have to tool around in those tools that you're talking about. I have to get in there and do what I got to do. Conversational AI tool sounds to me like, hey, so I have my onboarding process set up. Can you make it so that when a new employee comes on board, they get sent this link and they're told to do this, and then they're told to set up a meeting? Go. That's what this sounds like, whether I'm doing it verbally or I'm typing it in.
And I think it'll get there.
I mean, do too.
What we've seen, so I made a video about this last week of the changes in Copilot Studio. And I mean, in the last few months, I've been highlighting the fact that Copilot Studio is a little bit of a mess. If you want to understand about extending Copilot, it wasn't really logical how those things went together, because Copilot Studio was a place to build custom Copilots, and the extending Copilot for Microsoft 365 was a little bit of an add-on. But they've changed it. The design of it has changed, and we have new features in there. One of the features is you can now describe what you want to build, which I think is a nice feature, but is of limited utility. I mean, we have this in Power Apps, we have this in Power Automate. This is coming along. It's got better since it was first released, but it's not to the point yet where you can just write the text of a very sophisticated process and it's going to go and do everything for you. There are limitations. And the other thing they've done is started creating templates. So there are templates in there. If you want to, say, do a Q&A with a website, for example, there's a template where you can just open the website Q&A template, tell it what template or SharePoint site you want to use, and it's going to go ahead and build that for you without you doing a great deal. So I think this is coming along. But I would come back to the idea of your Copilot is not your 20-year tenured expert. Your Copilot is your intern, right? So can you make this, could you say to an intern in your organization, hey, we've got all of these tools, and this is the process that we go through to make X happen. Can you come up with a way of helping us join that together and making it clearer to people, or writing it out, or doing a flow chart, or whatever it may be? That would be in the capabilities of an intern most of the time. What isn't going to be in the capabilities of an intern is, we don't know what the heck we're doing, and we make this up differently every time we do it. So can you make this process for us? Can you, without any information, can you make this process for us? And in most cases, you're not going to ask your interns to do that. And I think it's exactly the same with Copilot. Like, what you can ask Copilot to do depends on your ability to be able to communicate your process or how you do things. And if you don't know, it's I forget the term now, but there's a term of the cycle that you go through to like explain something, and you learn something and then you explain it to a 5-year-old. I don't know. But based on what you can explain and what trips you up, you go back and you learn again, you learn some more, and then you go back and try to explain it to a 5-year-old again. And at the point that you can go from end to end and you can explain it to a 5-year-old, what that demonstrates is that you understand that completely. Because as adults, we tend to explain the things that we understand, and we tend to gloss over the things that we don't, and we never think about it too deeply. But we can't do that with a Copilot. You can't do that with an intern. You can't do that with a child that you're teaching. And I think that's what is going to trip this this up. So if you're looking at this and saying, I don't know how I'm running my business at all, and Copilot is going to do it for me. Copilot, I keep going back to this. This is a tool to make you more productive, to make you more efficient. It's not an effort eliminator, it's an effort reducer.
Yeah, but I think more people are in the camp. Well, I don't know this. I just made up a stat. I was going to say, there's a lot of people in a camp where they're like, hey, I tried this, doesn't work. It's not good. I'm out of here. Where if they knew what it could do, they would probably dig a little bit deeper. But a lot of people are like, yo, I don't got time. Whatever. I got a business to run, or I have tasks that I need to complete. Until Copilot can walk in here and do these things with me or alongside me or for me, get out of my face. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, on this show, I want to make sure that I give away good advice. You know what I'm saying? Like, what practical advice can you take to combat this situation? And I think the first thing you can do is get your S in order. No one's asking you to be perfect. You know what I'm saying? But you want some documented processes and tools that you rely on working hand in hand. That to me is when you can then step in and say something like, all right, I need Copilot to act as an agent on behalf of this process that we already have along with these tools. Step in front of there and, process a ticket. If you see that this ticket came and it has this context, look over here, because then that'll tell you what manager you need to get approval from to take it up to the next level, because now there's a purchase order involved. All that other type of stuff. To me, where you start is by getting your stuff together. That is very difficult in a larger organization where things are sprawling all over the place, because then somebody at the top or some people at the top have to get everything in order. But what I've seen, my experience is that these big organizations, they're not getting it together, but some department has somebody who's like, oh man, I see the potential here, and they go hard and they make it happen for their organization, for their department. That's just the reality. So
well, I think you're right. There is that is the reality, but I think Copilot isn't the tool to combat that. I think there were other things that were announced where they're more relevant to the picture that you're painting. I don't know if you saw, for example, the Copilot playing Minecraft demo.
I did.
So what? And I think it was a really bad demo for the audience. But the point was that you had Copilot watching live what was going on screen and helping you with it. There was another announcement that was made around Power Automate, where you're going to be able to use Power Automate to click through your process, to do your work, and to tell Power Automate verbally what you're doing or what you're trying to do. So train Power Automate on your process, and it's going to create a Power Automate flow out of that. Now, those two things, you couple those two things together, and those are the places that those tools are going to help you with the issue that you're highlighting there. And you could take the outputs of that and you could couple that into a Copilot, and you could say, okay, we have the outline of a process that's a repeatable process. However, we've gone about capturing that information. And now we're going to give that to a Copilot, and we're going to put it in a natural language processing wrapper where your interface isn't learning what to click or learning which app to go to. Your interface is just talking to Copilot. And that's going to be the power of Copilot. So I think what Microsoft is doing is really simplifying this in how they're communicating about it. But by simplifying it, they're kind of only showing you one layer of the onion. And there's all of these layers underneath it that you need to kind of understand to really get to grips with it. Because I think in most businesses, you have those pieces of a puzzle that if you sat someone in front of a computer and said, hey, just do this, and the AI is going to watch how you do it, and then it's going to give you a process, and it's going to be repeatable, and you can go in and edit it if it's not understanding it quite right. But that's going to be your tooling rather than having to write this all out and then give it to the Copilot. Yeah. And so I think there's lots of pieces to this, and really they're oversimplifying it to make it approachable. And I can see the reason for doing that, but I can completely understand the point that you're making, that there's going to be some people who pick this up who genuinely think, I don't know how to onboard someone in my company. Copilot's going to do it for me. And they're going to devote...
Because Microsoft said so.
Yeah, they're going to devote half a day to it. They're going to get nowhere, and they're going to say, well, this thing sucks, and they're never going to look at it again.
Yeah, which is why it's very important. Nick, you do it and I do it. We train people. Microsoft is a ginormous organization with a million things going on. Some of them things, tools specifically, you can approach them, get going, and you're good to go. But another reality is that Microsoft builds these powerful tools that have multiple levels. You just need training. You can't get around it unless you're going to sit around and do these things yourself and learn it, which is like how a lot of us learn. You need someone else to tell you, hey, what are you doing? What's your goal here? Well, I want to build a help desk. I said, Microsoft said that I could do this and a third. Okay, well, here are the steps that you need to take before you even get there. Let's have a conversation, whatever. The training is important because, yes, they sell it as though it's really simple, but I get it. You have to sell it. You can't sit in front of you can't make an advertisement and go, all right, listen, there's 18 different things you need to do in order to make this happen. Just give them the cream. Give them the cream. You know what I'm saying? Tell them what they're going to get. And then when they get in the world of, using it, you have to get education on it. The training is just mandatory as far as I'm concerned.
No, I agree. And I think the other part of the puzzle is that in lots of organizations, there's this kind of narrative that has been built that for the things that you do in a certain way, there's a very important set of reasons as to why you do them that way. And your process, your way of doing X is so unique that this is a really hard problem to tackle. But at the end of the day, when you bring in someone like me or like you or the consultants who look at these kinds of things, the reality is that a lot of the time that isn't the case.
I agree.
And your thing that you think is really special to you is 95% the same as every other company that does that same thing, because ultimately you want to bring someone in, you want to hire them. The steps that you go through are exactly the same steps as the company next door. And you've just been, you've got yourself used to this idea of, we do everything and we're so unique in the way that we do things. So, so there's a skill to be able to identify that very small sprinkling of uniqueness that's important to the way that you do a process and integrate it in there, but to also recognize that starting with a skeleton that a company like Microsoft has built for you is a heck of a lot of more efficient a lot of the time than saying, I'm going to go out and build this from scratch. Like Microsoft is providing templates for a reason. They're providing templates because these are the things that most companies are going to want to do.
Right.
And if you're a 5-year-old gardening company with 20 employees, then do you really want to come up with your own unique way of doing X that's different to the Microsoft template? What value is that going to bring you?
Right. Yeah, good point. And I do want to put out there is a way to involve your uniqueness. There is some uniqueness involved to it. For instance, everybody has to make phone calls at a certain point in the process that has the gardening company. You're going to make phone calls because that's just what it is. At this point in the process, you have to make phone calls because of whatever process it is. Where your uniqueness comes in is that you go out and meet certain people. You build your network. You know how to talk to people in a different way that other people don't know how to talk to people. You remember certain things and you connect certain dots. So when you make your phone calls, you do it in a certain way that makes you unique. I'm brand new, or maybe I've been at this for a while, and I do my phone calls in a certain way that just isn't yielding the results that yours yield because you're better at the phone call process than I am. But the bottom line is that we're both making phone calls. You have to make the phone calls because in the process that happens. So the process is just like you, Nick, and just like me, and just like every other consultant out there who's worth their money. We can see. We have the eyes to be able to see what the actual process is, and then after that, we build technology to support it. And you can still inject your human uniqueness because that is not going to go away. So I don't want anybody to run away thinking that their process is so unspecial that they're going to get replaced.
just focus on where it's important, though. Focus on where it actually makes a difference, because like if ultimately the template gives out the laptop first and gives them their username and password second, the fact that you give them their username and password first and give them the laptop second, if that's going to be an extra $20,000 of development to make that work, then is it actually important? And I think that's the question that I come down to with this of, where is the value? And, that kind of human connection side that you always come back to, Thurman, that's where the value is.
Absolutely.
It's not in the steps of these very fixed processes.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Nick, let's go over to you. What came out of Build that caught your fancy?
So I think it wasn't exactly out of Build, but I think one of the things that I really was interested in was the announcement the day before Build of the Copilot Plus PCs. And specifically, there's a new feature that's coming to those PCs called Recall. that, in my opinion, is starting to show us how AI can really be a proactive assistant in our lives rather than just something that we call upon when we need help. And this is a bit of a controversial topic because what this does is it takes a screenshot of your screen every few seconds, and then it uses AI to analyze it so that I can say, you know, I was having a meeting with Thurman, and while I had that meeting open, I had another document up. Where was that document? You know, and theoretically, because you're appearing on screen and the document's appearing on screen, Recall will be able to connect those two things together and say, "Here you go. Here's your document." And we just can't search like that right now in Microsoft 365. We don't have that kind of contextual aspect to it. So a lot of people are upset about this because they don't want Microsoft recording what they're doing on screen. A lot of people are upset about it from a security perspective, and I understand those concerns.
Yeah.
But I do think this is an interesting innovation, and if we are to get the full benefit, even the benefit that you've been talking about today of AI and really understanding what we're doing, if we're going to get that, then we have to let AI look at what we're doing, right? If you're going to train someone, like, how do we train someone in our work? Like, we might have them sit down next to us and, you know, go through our process and talk about it while we're doing it. And that's how people learn, right? And if we hired someone new and we said, "Hey, you can't look at my screen because you might see something secret there," like, that would be a really bad way of training people to do a job, right?
Yeah.
To show them. So I think there's a balance here, but I'm kind of excited by the idea that if we're giving Copilot, if we're giving our AI tools eyes on what we're doing, then it opens up, in my opinion, a whole host of possibilities that haven't been there before. And I've been talking for months now about how I was kind of disappointed when Windows Copilot came out, and it was just kind of like an Edge window that was kind of redesigned, and it didn't really have any insight into the operating system. I suggested at that point that the tool that we should be using is Power Automate Desktop, because that can see everything and understand everything that's going on our desktop. Yep. And I feel like with Recall, Microsoft is kind of stepping towards that a little bit, of having a visual and contextual understanding of what we're actually doing on our PCs.
But you said it's proactive. Is it proactive in the way that, you know, I was doing some stuff back to your example. I had the meeting with you, and there's a document that we brought up. I did that on Tuesday. And something in that meeting, you know, maybe I said to you, "All right, Nick, let me get back to you on Thursday. Give me a couple days, I'll get back to you." Is this going to tell me on Thursday, "Hey, you told Nick that you were going to get back to him. Here's the document you were talking about"?
Not yet. No, it's not going to do that yet. But my point is that unless we feel comfortable with Copilot having that data and having that insight into what we're doing, then there's no way that it ever can be that proactive.
Right. Yeah, gotcha.
Like, it's got to have the data by watching what we're doing and listening to what we're saying in order to help us in that way.
Yeah, but if I have my email in its basic form a few years ago started saying, "Hey, do you want to follow up with this? Do you want to follow up on this email because you sent it 2 days ago and they didn't respond," or something like that. Do you want to follow up? And it's like, that's artificial intelligence. You know what I'm saying? All they would be doing is just graduating that technology. I'm sure it'll eventually get there, but I would love what sounds like a second brain. You know what I'm saying? Or an assistant or a co-pilot. I'd love a co-pilot. You know what I'm saying? To be like, "Thurman, here's the rundown. You know what I mean? You today you want to get back to Nick about this document, and don't forget you also have this." That is where I am. You know what I'm saying? And that's where I need to be. And for the people who are worried about security, I believe it was you who said it. If there's anybody who you're going to want in your stuff because you just have to let them in there, let it be Microsoft. That's one. And then two, the people that you pay to host your stuff, to do your business with, they're already in your stuff. They already know what you got going on. Microsoft knows these things. You know what I'm saying? Like, Microsoft is all seeing. So
well, I think that's probably right. And I mean, the fact of the matter is, do any of us truly know that Windows isn't recording a screenshot every 3 seconds right now?
oh, here we go, Nick.
I mean, you don't like. There's lots of people who have been like, "Oh, well, I need to use open source software," and I'm like, "Okay, well, how many lines of code is Windows?" I have no idea, but it's going to be a lot, right?
Mhm.
Like it's beyond the capabilities of any one individual to fully, even if you could fully review the code of Windows. Like, no individual is going to be able to fully review the code of Windows, as I understand the scale of what we're talking about when we're looking at a software product like that. And I understand the points that people are making, but this there's a lot of hysteria, in my opinion, that's going on around this, and I don't understand how can a business innovate if there's going to be this kind of unreasonable hysteria alongside, I think it's reasonable to take feedback on security, or these are things that you may not have thought of, or these are issues I mean, this is the reason that there are bug bounty programs, right? That, like, there will be bugs in software and we want to incentivize the good guys to find them before the bad guys do, right? That's the reason for that being the case. So this is a model that works, that companies take feedback, but if AI is to ultimately be as helpful as it can be, and we're to choose the path that is the good path with AI as opposed to the bad path with AI, then it has to have insight into what we're doing, and how we go about giving it that insight. I don't know. I mean, sitting over here, I have one of those Google Home Assistant things sitting there. It's listening to me. I have no idea what Google knows of this conversation.
Right.
I'm assuming it knows something.
Our kids grow up in a time where security is not focused on. So you download apps. Adults are in this time, but the kids grow up in this world. So that you download apps, they say, "Hey, we're gonna touch your data, but hey, we're not gonna do anything unethical with your data." You agree to that because you just ain't got no choice. Pretty much, you want to use the app. There's probably not a lot of competition in this area. And then you're definitely going to be doing it with the big ones, your Facebooks, your Instagrams, your WhatsApp, you know what I'm saying, Twitter. You're going to be doing LinkedIn. You're going to be doing it with those, giving them your data. These kids grow up in a world where not only do they give them their data, begrudgingly, but they willingly give over data. Look at me, where I am right now, where I'm located. Take a tour of my apartment. Here's where I live. Here's where I work. Security's not a thing. You know what I'm saying? Let me not say that. Security is not the encouraged norm if you look at social media. And where do kids look? They look at social media. It's all about more access. You know what I'm saying? The families, whole adults, filming their whole families and their kids on the internet. My wife just had a baby. And we're in the hospital, and I'm gonna put the camera on her, and you're gonna notice she just had a baby. Like, what's going on right here? So all of the unreasonable hysteria that you're talking about, I don't believe it. People say it, but they don't do it. And Microsoft at least has an interest in helping you protect your data. So, take what you can get, basically, because when we're all old and gone, I don't know what the world is gonna look like. Maybe it looks like Terminator 2. Who knows? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? But your security is going to be, it's not what people make it sound like with the unreasonable hysteria. I don't believe them. But
well, I think there's a reason to think about it, and I think there are experts in this field that we can learn from, and Microsoft can learn from. They're not going to think of everything, but I think the flip side is that we know that there are a lot of people that are stressed out because of this constant digital connection that we have.
Absolutely.
There are lots of people that are burned out. There are lots of people that don't feel motivated in their jobs, where it's having a negative impact on their mental health, where it's having an impact on their family life. And we shouldn't see the security downsides of an innovation as more important than the mental health downsides or the family downsides that we experience as a society through this push to be constantly connected. And there are two ways of approaching this. We can say, well, I'm not going to be constantly connected, and we can opt out. Or we can use technology to try to address some of the problems that we're seeing in a reasoned but innovative way. And I think a holistic point of view is that security is very important, but people's mental health and people's engagement with their work is also very important. And we need to find a way to approach those two things in balance and to work out those two things in balance. And my concern with a lot of the feedback that I've seen is that there's almost a diminishment of this being a problem. And it is a real problem. And Microsoft is innovating to try to fix a problem that exists, because our brains are not designed for the volume of data that we're being asked to be connected to right now.
Yeah, facts. It's you said balance, but it's hard, Nick, because like, let's say you want to find some help, some like a therapist or something. Highly likely in 2024, you're going to be sitting in front of a computer talking to somebody about your mental health. You know what I'm saying? And here we go again. You can't even disconnect that way. So to get some good help, you got to sit in front of a computer.
And that's a really interesting point, because at least one of those major companies that provides that help, Thurman, has been evidenced to have a far lesser grasp on protecting your data than Microsoft does. And so, you know, we think about these things like imbalance. Microsoft, you know, not everyone likes Microsoft, but in the grand scheme of things, of these tech startups that just want to collect all your data and make money from it, they're kind of the good guys at this point. That's
crazy. That's crazy.
You wouldn't have thought that 20 years ago, but that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah. Let's talk about data.
Okay.
So just to close out here, the theme, kind of what we've been talking about here, is, you know, companies getting their stuff together. You know, what onus is on them. One of the things that I always like to say is, I say it a million times. That's why I'm a SharePoint guy. You know what I'm saying? And I'm always like, you got to get your data in order. You got to get your data in order. Now, you probably won't be doing it by yourself. You'll probably need some help. So yeah, of course I can swoop in there and help out. But one of the main things that I'm always preaching is that this things with where you think that it's okay to run your whole business on spreadsheets. This is a real thing. I really truly don't have a problem with spreadsheets. I just don't think your business data begins there. Your data begins inside of a system. Spreadsheets should be the last stop on the data train. Because, for instance, if you wanted to go get your information from LinkedIn right now, let's say you wanted to pull all your information out of there. It's a system. LinkedIn is a system. It's a tool. So what are you going to do? You're going to go export. And when you export it, you get your clean data put inside of spreadsheets. That's what you want. Here's another example. If Netflix said, hey, we want you to sign up. We're the best thing ever. We got a bunch of TV shows. Just need your username, password, and some other data. We're going to send you a spreadsheet. We want you to put your information into that and send that back to us. You'd be like, wait a minute. What? I'm not doing that. You know what I'm saying? And you'd be like, what kind of stupid process is this? So I'm telling you, you don't have to, or you should not put your important business data. The first stop should not be putting it inside of spreadsheets. You can if you want to. I'm just making a recommendation and saying that put it inside of a system. And one of the very first systems you get to have your hand on, as easy as you can get your hands on an Excel spreadsheet, is SharePoint. So as much as I shout about SharePoint, I'm not going to tell you, oh yeah, it's all about SharePoint, that's where you need to go. I'm just going to say you need to put it inside of a system. And SharePoint, if you have access to Excel, you likely have access to SharePoint. It's one of the lowest hanging fruits of where you could put your stuff inside of a system. And then one day, for whatever reason, if you want to export it, you can do that into a spreadsheet and crunch all the numbers that you want. So I just want to put that out there. And the other thing about that is, when you're set up in that way, now you make your AI super powerful. You know what I'm saying? Because now you're nice and structured. You have some processes documented. You got all your data in one area. It's now time to say, hey, Copilot, look at all of my stuff over here and look at my stuff over here, and let's start bringing these things together. Let's start working towards making them better or whatever. You know, like you said, you got your intern. Hire your intern while your stuff is, you know, you're getting there. No one's perfect. You're not going to be perfect, but strive for that at minimum. Then your co-pilot could just knock it out of the park for you.
Yeah, I think that's entirely right. That you know, there's this issue of document lifecycle management. Mm-hmm. And I think what you come down to is, well, what should actually be a document? Like, should you have various Excel spreadsheets floating around? No. But also, should you have various versions of different types of documents, whether they be your contracts, whether they be your proposals, whatever it is? If your data is a mess, then it's going to be messy getting any kind of, not just AI, but any kind of automation going to help you. If you have to exert a lot of brain power on what is the right version to use, and there's no repeatable logic to it, then you're not going to be able to train Power Automate or Copilot or something else to help you with that. And I think this comes down to the biggest part of adopting something like Copilot is this data estate review, making your data estate work, giving people just enough access, taking away the things that are redundant information that people shouldn't see. But I have to say again and again, this isn't an issue just for Copilot. This is an issue that is amplified to some degree, is kind of magnified by Copilot. But this is an issue for your company. If no one can find anything, then that's an issue. And this is one of those things that creates this stress that we were just talking about. If you constantly have to think about, where's the right place to do this? Is this the right file? Did someone edit it? You know, I used to work with someone who insisted on having everything in Excel, but at the same time was neurotic about the fact that less experienced users. Now, bear this in mind, that this is a person who is holding themselves up as the epitome of having everything in order because they've designed nice Excel spreadsheets. But all of us idiots working with this person could inadvertently go in and mess up her formulas or mess up her layout. And, you know, the answer was just don't use Excel.
Yes.
Because Excel is not a database. But, you know, this person had been doing this for as long as I'd been alive and probably will continue until she retires along those lines. But this is the mindset that you see from people. And it just causes, number one, it caused stress for her. And number two, it caused stress for everyone else that was working with her, because there wasn't just this go in and do the process. It was, have I done it right? Have I screwed something up? Am I going to get shouted at because I missed? That's just not where you want to be.
Yeah.
And so knowing where data goes and knowing what to do when you change something so that it's manageable within a system, that's where we all want to be, because then you can just get on and do your work and not worry about it too much.
Right. Let the technology do the technology. Let the person do the person stuff. It's very simple as that. Like back to the Netflix example, Netflix is not going to let you forget to give you their email address. Something as basic as the data validation, which allows you to say, I'm going to put in my name, I'm going to put in my email address. You're not going to walk away from there without giving them your email address. So now they have to do a back and forth of, hey, you forgot to give me your email address. Can I get your email address? No, that's not a thing. So it doesn't have to be a thing at work either. Because when you send a spreadsheet out and someone forgets to give you an email address because you can't force them to, and now you get your spreadsheet back, you mad because they're missing that information. They got to send it back to you. And now you're mad because I thought I did everything right. Just everything you're saying, Nick, is 1,000% true. And this is a real thing. It's a real thing. People hate their flipping jobs. I just so happen to, you know, enjoy what I do, but I'm in the minority. You know what I'm saying? I know that those of us who enjoy what we do, it's just, that's not the norm. Most people hate their flipping jobs. And you make it worse when you put bad technology in between them and the work they got to do. So I'm getting fired up, Nick. I think I need to relax.
I think you need some nicely designed, technology-driven processes.
There we go.
That de-stress you, Thurman.
Exactly.
I think maybe you need to go use some SharePoint.
Exactly. I might have a problem. Listen, Nick, before we go, tell people where they can find you and what you got going on.
So head over to LinkedIn, see what I'm doing there. Also got a new thing out this week for June and ongoing. I now have a new option on my website that you can check out. If you're thinking about getting Copilot for Microsoft 365, if you have already bought it and you need help with it, if you're a small or medium-sized business, you may not know what the help should look like, what type of organization you should get it from, what it should cost. I've got a nice new package on my website where I've got everything packaged together in one straightforward cost based on the number of users that you've got. Technical readiness, help with your leadership, one-on-one coaching for your executives, training for your end users, all of the most common things that organizations need for Copilot. So if that's something of interest to you, if you're just getting started or you need some help, head over to my website and take a look. That might be a good fit for you.
Nice. So I'm very happy to say that I've redone my risk register course. And matter of fact, the last person that bought, they said, Thurman, you've created a monster. Now I use SharePoint lists for everything. And that right there is, that just, I love that. You know what I'm saying? Especially to the point we were just talking about. This person was using spreadsheets before. Mm-hmm. Now I showed them what they could do with SharePoint with their risk register specifically. Now they're like, oh my God, this is where I need to be. So if you would like to take my risk register training, specifically because you manage risks, you're a project manager, you manage risks, you probably create your risk register inside of a spreadsheet. Just take my risk register training and it'll change your life. The link is going to be in the bio. Well, it's in my bio on the profile, but it's in the description of this video. So make sure you do that and change your life. I'd be happy to have you. All right, Nick. Another good one in the books here. We'll talk to you in a couple more weeks.
All right. See you in a couple of weeks, Thurman. Take care.
All right. Good deal.